Hey, good evening. Good evening, everybody. Once again, once again, we're back. We're back again for another episode of the Black Belt. Not, I'm sorry, of the Conversation 9-8. The Conversation 9-8. Just want to thank you guys so much for your continued support. I'm so looking forward to today's conversation and just sitting down and having conversations with you guys. Again, man, thank you guys so much for your continued support. It means a lot. It means a lot more than what you probably would think. And I appreciate that more than what you know. So make sure you guys tune in. Let me know where you're tuning in from. Make sure if you want to comment. This is an interactive conversation. I'm looking forward to next week. Next week, gonna have a special guest, and just looking forward to that conversation. That conversation is going to be a very, I would say, thought-provoking conversation. But again, man, thank you guys so much for what you do and your continued support because it means a lot. I'm gonna share this like I do every week, and then we're gonna jump right into it. We're gonna jump right into this conversation. Jump right into it. So again, I'm excited and happy, and let's just make sure we share this so we can get it going. I'm enjoying this weather because up north, it's I'm enjoying it. It was like 60 degrees a day, and it felt like I was like 85 degrees. 85 degrees like down south. So I just enjoyed it. Went outside, did some yard work, and just looking forward to some more warmer weather. What's going on, Kamante? How you doing, brother? Hey, want to tell you, man, very proud of you. I like how you moving. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. God got you covered. Not only that God got you covered, but the decisions that you're making right now will definitely benefit you later on in life. So keep doing what you're doing, brother. Very proud. I'm going to connect with you too. Serious about that. Hey, Miss Paige Bank, how you doing? Thank you very much. Thank you tuning in all the way from the metropolis of Greensboro, Alabama. So I'm just sharing this with a few people, and make sure you guys share it. And we're just gonna go ahead on and get on with this conversation. So tonight, I'm so excited about tonight because tonight we're gonna talk about something that's gonna go a little bit deeper than the surface. Because I think a lot of things we like to, and with now, I'll just say human nature, we like to just hit on the wave tops. We don't like to really go beneath things because a lot of the things we like to do, we like to just put things up, put a front up to the world, like everything is good and everything that we're invincible and that we got everything figured out. And that's not the truth. That right there is not the truth at all. The reality is this. The reality is that we all have things. Because of our human nature, we all have things that we're going to have to face and we're going to have to deal with. And I'm going to get into it. Just want to get some more comments. Come on to, hey, you're welcome. And I really mean that. I like how you're moving. I like the person that you are. And it's just, God's got his hands on you. And I just wanted to share that with you. I share it open, but God got his hands on you. Miss Jones, how you doing? Thank you for tuning in and watching all the way from Tucson, Arizona. Shirley Shepherd, thank you. Good evening. So, all right, we're just going to get right into it. And like I said before, we like to do a lot of things and hit things on the surface, but I want to hit it deeper than that, because it's going to be helpful. But tonight, the thing that we're going to talk about, the conversation that I wanted to present forward is just overcoming the fear of facing the vulnerabilities of the reality of you. And I say that one more time. It's overcoming the fear of facing the vulnerabilities of the reality of you. Now, why am I saying that? I'm saying that because in our life, like we all like to put forth our best foot forward and put our best front up or put the mask on or portray this image as if we got everything together and we're so sure and we're so confident in all these things. And there's some areas that we are, but we all have shortfalls. We all have areas where we are vulnerable in. And we have to overcome the fear of facing those vulnerabilities, because a lot of times what we tend to do is we choose not to face those things and make excuses for it and avoid it altogether. And that does not do well, because that leaves us to a place where we are in a place of abyss. We'll be in a place of abyss, and that place doesn't do us any good. And it's scary. It is extremely scary to not only acknowledge, because these things we know, we acknowledge, we know what our shortfalls are, we know the things that we need to work on, but it seems to be so much easier to avoid things instead of deal with them because of our mental makeup. Because, okay, if I'm fearful of something, especially fearful of facing something about me, then what I would do is I would try to avoid it. And I can remember it's just like this. I mean, and this is the thing. I've learned so much in my trial and errors in life that those times and those efforts that I put into avoiding something, I really wasted so much time that I could, because of fear, I've wasted years of my life by not being too fearful to face certain realities about me, because I was afraid that that was going to expose me being vulnerable. So I was afraid to have deficits or need assistance in certain areas that I felt like, because of social pressure or certain things, that I should have had all figured out. So I would suffer in silence in those areas because I was afraid to face my vulnerabilities, because those vulnerabilities are a reality of just who I am. And I'm thinking, and what really made me think about that is you have to get to a space where you start to gain the confidence of accept the confidence that I've gained. And I say this, I got to a space where I was able to gain confidence in accepting the flaws that I have. And in accepting those flaws that I have, what it made me realize is that I don't have it all together. Now, because I don't have it all together, I develop a mindset of let me try to keep getting better in every area. Yeah, there's some areas where I'm stronger in. There's some areas where it comes natural to me. There ain't no problem. Boom, I can handle that. But there's a lot of other areas where I need help in. So I can either walk around with pride, because and pride is really fear. And I like that. I like this. I got to say this. I got to say this. See, a lot of us, we try to present ourselves as if we're prideful and we're confident and we got it all together. But really, that pride is masking the fear that we really have on the inside. And what I mean by that fear that we have on the inside is we are so fearful of the things where we put up a front like we got it together, all because we are too afraid to either face ourselves and be like, you know what, I don't have it together. Or the other thing is say, you know what, humble ourselves and say, hey, look, wave my hand and say, hey, look, I need some help in this area. I'm struggling in this area. I need some help. I need somebody to help me out. I may need a mentor. I may need somebody who even may be younger than me that didn't have the experience that I'm trying to go through. But because of pride, we're trying to act like we got it together, but really that pride is just masking the fear that we have on the inside. And we have to be able to overcome that fear to face our vulnerabilities, because we all are vulnerable. We all are. We all are. And that right there is a reality of life. That doesn't mean that there's something wrong with us. And I would tell you, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with us. There's a lot of social norms that we have in America, in our society. There's a lot of social norms, and we put so much unrealistic expectations or pressure on ourselves to feel like we have to meet somebody else's timeline, or we have to do certain stuff by a certain timeline, that we become overwhelmed, because when we are not doing certain things, we feel as if we are failing. But there's not failing. It's just a vulnerability that we all have. We all are vulnerable. And the truth about life is that once you accept the fact, the reality that you have vulnerabilities, that helps you navigate life so much easier. Because when you refuse to accept that you have vulnerabilities, what you end up doing is you end up going around with your guard up all the time, and you're wasting so much energy, time, energy, and effort trying to protect yourself from others, protect yourself from your vulnerabilities being exposed. To where if you just accept it and take ownership and acknowledge that you have vulnerabilities, what that does is let your guard down, because you already know it and you put it out there. So you're not wasting your time and energy trying to block other people from you being exposed by people seeing your vulnerabilities. Now, when we talk about the word vulnerability, that's scary to a lot of people. Why? Because just in natural interaction with different people, folks take advantage of people. And we don't like being taken advantage of. And that's a big fear that we all have. I even have that fear. You don't like nobody taking advantage of you. And I'm not telling you to put yourself out there to be taken advantage of. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is, if you acknowledge that you do have the vulnerabilities about you, and I'm going to go into some specifics about those vulnerabilities in different areas. Once you acknowledge those things, right, you can overcome the fear of facing it. Because now you acknowledge it, you recognize it, and you don't just see it and push it away. But when you acknowledge it, you're gaining the courage to face it. For example, there's a lot of people are vulnerable with their how they handle money. I personally wasn't a natural saver. I wasn't. That's just me. I wasn't a natural saver. I always worked. I've been pretty much getting a paycheck since I was 13 years old. I even started working before then. I used to go work and do landscaping for this lady after school when I was in the sixth grade. I used to leave my school, walk up there to the courthouse where my mom worked, and go right down the street and work for about 2 hours and get paid $10 an hour. I did that in the sixth grade, fifth, sixth grade. So I've always had the desire to work and to earn my own, even through school. I got a job working on a free lunch truck when I was 13 years old with Mr. Johnson, drove around and delivered that in the summertime. I even worked in high school. I worked at Piggly Wiggly. Shout out to Piggly Wiggly. Worked at Ward's. I did I've always worked, but I wasn't good at saving money. And the reason why I wasn't good at saving money was because I was never really taught how to. I was given advice on what to do, but I was never really set down to talk, hey, this is the why, or this is how you do it. And a lot of times we make those assumptions, but I was afraid to address my vulnerabilities. So as I got older, I would still work. I always worked, always had income coming in, but I was afraid to address my vulnerability that I didn't know how to properly manage money. Now, fast forward a few years, I made a lot of bad decisions, all because I was too afraid to admit that I needed help. I was too afraid to admit that I needed help. And what I found myself was making some bad decisions over and over and over again, all because I was too afraid to overcome the fear, to face the vulnerability of the reality that I wasn't smart with managing money. And I had to get to a place, and it took a while. I had to get to the place like, why am I worrying about what somebody else think when I can address this and get better? And watch this. For years, I avoided it. And then I got to a space to where I started seeing other people and how other people work and how they did certain things. So I just started asking certain questions. And guess what? The steps that I needed, those tips that I needed, those small things, it was so easy. It wasn't a hard thing. It was just something that I wasn't used to. Other people had all of the tools to help me. They had all of the tools to help me overcome that vulnerability that I had, but I was too afraid to take the time to address it because I feared what other may have thought about me. And I lived in that imprisonment for years. Ms. Paige Banks said, why do we have to fail before we seek help? And Ms. Paige, a lot of that's a real good question. That is a real good question. A lot of times, many of us put ourselves in positions to fail because we are too prideful to just acknowledge and come open to say, hey, I need some help. I need some help. Because we fear what others may say about us. Because, hey, okay, well, you 30 years old, you should have had it all figured out about how to handle your money. Or you 25 years old, you should have had this figured out. Or you 40 years old, you should have had that figured out. And we worried about what others may say instead of us actually just taking the time to say, I need help with this. And this is the funny thing with that, Ms. Paige Banks, is failures. I started looking at failures as different. A lot of times failures are just notifications that we need to address something. The problem is we choose not to address it, and we choose just to allow it to stay where it's at. And that is the issue. That right there is the issue. We have to start to say, you know what, I'm okay with failing, because we are going to fail. Like, that's the funny thing about it. We are going to fail, and it's so. That's why I really love and this. I'm talking about life, but I'm going on the spiritual side. That's why in the Bible teaches us we overcome the enemy by the blood of the Lamb, what Jesus did for us, and the words of our testimony. The reason why the words of our testimony are so powerful is because we are reinforced, because when we hear something and we hear about what God has done for somebody else that's in a very similar situation or even worse situation than us, it encourages us to continue. So that's why I'm all about sharing. I'm not afraid to be vulnerable and talk about that I had a problem with managing money. Because guess what? Somebody may hear this and be like, you know what, dang, I ain't alone. I'm not all by myself. You know, you have so many people in marriages that struggle in relationships and marriages because they feel like they are themselves. They feel like they are the only one. They feel like nobody else knows, nobody else going through what they're going through, nobody else would understand. And because we don't share, or we don't want to put ourselves out there as we're vulnerable. Now, when I say being vulnerable, right, I ain't telling you to subject yourself to any and everybody, because some folks just ain't gonna do you no good. I would say exercise wisdom and discernment to know who you can and who you cannot trust, because everybody's not deserving of your story. Everybody's not deserving to know what's going on, because some people will use that against you. That's a reality of life. But the other side to that is you shouldn't choose to suffer in silence if you need help with something, because I promise you, somebody else already got excuse me. Somebody already have experience that they can help you with. And Ms. Paige Banks said, failure should be a lesson to us. It should be, but the reality is this: we don't want it. We don't want others to know that we have failed. So we've painted this picture as if we got so much stuff going on that we got it all together, that we try to portray like we got it together, that we are too afraid to say, I need help. And we'll sit there and live in our failure, all simply because we don't want to say, I need help. We all do. I've done that. And then been upset at myself because by me doing that, what I realized was I've wasted years. I ended up wasting years, like years, on something that I could have addressed a long time ago and benefited from it now. All because I was too afraid to overcome my fear of facing my vulnerabilities. And facing your vulnerabilities is getting to the place where that's not going to control me. And a lot of us, many times, we allow things to control us simply because we're too fearful to face it. And we will go around, and subject ourselves to the consequences of not facing that fear, of not facing the thing that is causing us issues, problems, complications, consequences. The hardships, and we'll just keep facing it over and over, all simply because we are too fearful to face the things that are causing it. And to face it may be something different, and it can be all different things. It may be you facing the hurt acknowledging that your mama or your parents hurt you, or acknowledging that something that happened, how you grew up a certain way. You can acknowledge that. That doesn't mean that you got to go back and you got to make them account for it, but you can take ownership of it, and you can start to move forward to heal. You can start to move forward to heal. And by healing, that means that, hey, I may have failed. I may have had an abortion. I may have committed something that I'm so afraid, I'm so ashamed to even let somebody know. I may have done something that seems to be violating certain codes and doing certain things. I may have done some very foul things. But guess what? You can either keep running from it, or you can say, you know what? I acknowledge that I did these things. But guess what? I'm ready to address the thing that pushed me to make those choices to do that. You know, we all have we all know the reality of us. We all do that. We all know who we are. We all, if you take inventory of yourself, you know what you deal with. You know the things that you have to overcome. You know those things that those shortfalls in your life. You know that. You know those things. Nobody have to tell you. You know the areas where you struggle with. You know that. And that's why one of the hardest things too is to when you make yourself vulnerable to other people and people don't seem to be like they're there, a genuine nature there to support you. It makes it seems to compound that fear of being exposed, compound your vulnerabilities. It seems to do that. That's why it's so encouraging when you can get some people or get some friends or a companion or somebody that you can just be vulnerable to. You can say, hey, I have this problem, or you can say, I'm struggling in this area. You can say this, that, and the third. But a lot of us, we don't have that. We live in house with people, or we cohabitate with people. We live with people. We work with people, or we have relationships with people that we can't be vulnerable with. And you know how draining that is? That's so draining. So a lot of us with that, because we can't be vulnerable, we end up holding all of this stuff in. And it just grows and grows and grows. And it's like pressure building in a pipe. And we hold it in, hold it in, hold it in, hold it in, to the point to where we are dying on the inside, all because we are afraid, and that fear keep pounding on. Fear, 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 all afraid to face the vulnerabilities of the reality of you. You know, a lot of us, and then this is what happens. When we get to that space where we are afraid, we are afraid, and we just pack this stuff and we just hide it on the inside. What we end up doing is we develop the expectations of others to compensate because of our fear. We expect others to compensate what they do to cater to us because we are too afraid to deal with the reality of you. And then that's when we start to try to make other people suffer for stuff they didn't have nothing to do with, all because we were too afraid to face it. And we take our frustration out on those that God has blessed to come into your life to help you overcome those things, to help you go to the next level. And we start lashing out at them. We start taking our anger out at them. And the real issue is with you. The real issue is with you are afraid to face the vulnerabilities of the reality of you. And that reality, that vulnerability may be you probably was molested as a child. That vulnerability maybe you probably felt like you was the black sheep, or you probably felt neglected by your parents and didn't get the love and affection that that your sibling had. That vulnerability may be you may have felt like you wasn't good enough. That vulnerability may be you may be feeling like you was always not adequate enough or not smart enough to do something. And because they always told you were dumb, or they spoke demeaning things to you, or you probably feel like you're ugly because you probably feel like you're unattractive because people used to crack jokes and you probably never felt like that. So you carry that with you. And then what happens is you don't want to face those fears because the thought of even facing those fears make you feel like you become angry because guess what? Now I'm angry because now I got to face those things that hurt me. And I'm scared to face those things because you wasn't there when I was a kid and how that made me feel. You wasn't there. You didn't know how that hurt made me feel when I was waiting on my dad to come when he told me he was coming, but he never did. You don't know what that hurt feels like when I was expecting my mom to love me like she loved my siblings, but she never really did that. You don't know what hurt I had to deal with. You don't know that. So how dare you? How dare you expect me to face that? And what we don't realize is when we choose not to face that we stay stuck in that space and never really get to a place to where we can fulfill our true potential. Because we live in a prison of hiding from all of those triggers. And we expect other people that come into our life to compensate for that. instead of you growing for that and then being in a position to help those. Listen, I can remember, when in 2007, 2006, 2007, I deployed to Iraq. And in 2006, 2007, I deployed to Iraq. And what I can remember solely is the fact that that was by far the worst year that I've ever had. End up losing a marriage. Marriage went to the tank. And I can remember asking God all the time, like, God, why? And the Holy Spirit kept telling me, why not? And I'm sitting there angry, like, what you mean, why not? Why I got to go through this? God, I've been serving you since I was a young man. I've been doing this. I've been doing all of this. And you telling me, why not? Why did I have to endure that heartbreak? Why did I have to endure that betrayal? Why did I have to endure that feeling of shame? Why did I have to endure everything that I went through? Why did I have to go through that? And you fast forward, I've been able to help so many people from that experience because I can speak to the emotional aspects of it and the details because I have a level of empathy because I felt it. And God said that was why. Now, I didn't like that at the time. I did not like that. That forced me to deal with me. But as I look back and like, this didn't happen overnight now. Tell y'all, that ain't happen overnight. I was able to look back a few years back when I was in a position to where, and it started when even when I was going through what I went through, and I ended up suffering from depression, anxiety, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, dealing with a lot of different things. And I started going to counseling. And by when I went to counseling, what I started to realize was my counselor, my psychologist, he had asked me to talk to somebody else, and somebody else that was going through this almost similar thing that I went through. And I was able to help that individual because I started to realize that what I thought was a vulnerability, because I got to the space of where it said I needed help and I went and started seeking help, that thing that was a vulnerability that I thought eventually became a strength because I was able to pour into others from that space. Because once you get to a space where you overcome that fear and you say, you know what, I'm going to face that vulnerability of the reality of me. I'm going to face it. I'm going to address it. I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to put the work in to address it. Once you do that, what happens is it becomes a strength. It becomes a strength. And I would tell you, once you get to that space, it's so great. It is such a freeing space to be in. But you just have to get to a space to say, I'm gonna deal with it. I'm gonna deal with my ways. You know, we all like to say, oh, we got our ways. You know, that's just the way I do things. No, your ways, a lot of our ways are rooted in our inability to face the fear, the vulnerabilities of the reality of us. That's our ways, and our ways have become an excuse of not dealing with the reality of you. And we just expect, and think about it. Think about our ways, our unaddressed issues, our unaddressed things. And then we bring kids into this world and they grow up with it. Now they are exposed to that dysfunction and it may pass on to their kids. And now we got quote unquote generational curses that are perpetuated all simply because we are afraid to address something. I shared a post on my page as a drawing to where the grandfather and the father was pointing down and they was like yelling at the guy, and the guy was holding up a shield protecting his kids all down the line. And it said, you can be the change that you seek. You can be the change that you seek. You can stop that. And by him doing that, he was able to face that vulnerability. That stuff hurt when you have people that's hurting and talking to you a certain type of way. He chose to say, guess what? I'm going to do it. Ms. Paige Banks said, when we go through, we definitely have the whys, but when we realize that our pain was not for us directly, but to help others, it's amazing. Now, it is so, and Ms. Paige Banks, I know your story. I know your story, and I know it's not having been an easy road. But I would tell you, once you get to that space to say, you know what, you have a lot of whys, and I had a whole bunch of whys that I was getting angry to God about, because I was like, why God, why? And God was like, why not? And I'm saying like, bro, like for real, like why? But with that, what I ended up learning was, in that, I learned so much about me. I learned so much about me in that space, like really learning me. Because a lot of us, we live in our lives, but we don't even know ourselves because we're too afraid to address ourselves. And how can you know yourself if you don't understand and know your strengths and weaknesses? And really address them. Really address them. You know, why are you so short-tempered? Why are you so short-tempered with your kids? You know, why do you have the attitude that you have? You know, why do you have the mindset that you have? And a lot of us, we have the mindset, and there may be some women out there that had a mindset because they grew up and they seeing their dad or their grandfather being in a very dominant position, that they say to themselves that they ain't gonna never be me. And because they never address that, they go into relationships and they can't never really have sustained good relationships because they're always trying to push that their fear of being vulnerable to somebody controlling them and doing that. And the people they with, that's not even what they're trying to do. They're just trying to have a relationship. But you say ain't nobody gonna do that. And then now you live your life and then you just went through and destroyed all these relationships because you was afraid to deal with the pain and the trauma that you saw what you was exposed to. The people that you got in a relationship with ain't had nothing to do with what happened in the home that you was exposed with. Or vice versa, you see a dude that grow up that don't have his dad in his life, right? And his mama take care of him, and he used to his mama and been around a lot of single parents, single mothers. So he get comfortable with not even getting out there and doing anything. So he 30 years old, still staying at his mama house and expecting his mama to do stuff for him, instead of him having a mindset of going out there and being a provider and taking care of his family or establishing a life of his own. But he won't sit there and address the issues that he got. He'll sit there and just expect others to cater to him. See, that's just two small examples, but those are things that I'm talking about, how things can happen in our lives that we don't address. And it really gets us to a place, the reason why we don't address them because we're afraid to face the vulnerabilities that we have. And it's easier said than done. I acknowledge that. But I would tell you, once you make the decision to do it, you'll be upset at yourself that, dang, man, I done wasted all this time. And I go back to me with so much just financial literacy. So financial literacy, or just understanding about, money management, right? I was so afraid to say something that I wasted years. And then when I finally said something, was able to acknowledge what I realized, like, bro, I could have been did that. No, that's all I needed to do. And it was really a shift in the mindset. And it's small things. It's a small. A lot of times you'll find out that the stuff that you're afraid to deal with, the small tweaks. It's not those big things. It's the small tweaks. It doesn't mean that you have to change this and the third. It's small tweaks. Okay, you say you want to lose weight. That doesn't mean that you got to go out there and work 5 times a day or whatever. It can be small things like, guess what? Cut out sodas. Or you can say, hey, look, intermittent fasting. You can say, I'm going to eat from this time to this time, and I'm not going to eat the other times. You can do small things, and it doesn't mean that it's a big thing, but you can get the results. And once you start doing it, you'll realize, bro, that wasn't hard. That wasn't hard. It wasn't hard at all. And be like, bro, man, I done wasted all this time. I could have been did that. And that's what I'm talking about. So it's so easy to get to that space that we're afraid and we're stuck in there because we feel like it's so overwhelming. It can be overwhelming to us. But I promise you, once you start to take those steps to bettering you and facing the vulnerability of you, what you'll realize like, dang, it wasn't that hard. And it's the small things. You make small tweaks and you'll see a different trajectory in your life. You'll see things happening differently in your relationships. You'll see things happen differently with the people that you work with. You'll see different results. You'll start to see those small things because you say, you know what, I'm willing to face that vulnerability. I'm willing to deal with it. Then you would turn that vulnerability into a strength. But you have to be willing to overcome that. You have to be willing to overcome that. One of the things for me, you know, you talking about writing. I've always been an effective communicator, but I never liked writing. I didn't even like writing in school, all the way back to high school. I hated that I had to do a literary critique with Miss Dixon back in my 12th grade year. I hated it. Like, I hated writing. I hated, like, still writing today. I mean, I'm not a big fan of it, but I had a leader who would push me, and I didn't like being pushed. It was uncomfortable with being pushed. But guess what? Once I got to a space to where I accepted the fact that I needed the help, first thing it did was it took me being defended. It eliminated me being offended by what they were saying. Because when you're not ready to face your vulnerabilities or the reality, you easily offended by what somebody said to address it, even though it may be true. You get just easily offended. So when I said I'm willing to address it, it eliminated. Now I had to put some work in. It was some work that I had to do. It wasn't just it was some work. It was some work that I had to do, right? Fast forward. When I went from that leader, I went to another place. And what I started to realize was what once was a weakness for me started to become a strength. And I started to see the benefits of me making a choice to deal with the vulnerability that I had. And now it was like, dang, I started to see the results of it. And it really was just small things. It really was I needed to read more. It really was I needed to expose myself to more. And some of the small things, what did I do? What you do, Shep? Look, I got Grammarly on my phone. Grammarly is an app. It's an app that I use that when I type text messages, it tells you how to write in proper English, tells you where to put commas at, all this stuff, right? And I even use it for when I do my papers. So guess what that did? When I type, and I started just getting small practice. If I was on my phone and I'm on Facebook, I'm doing my words of wisdom, I'm doing that. Why not use that to get reps? And then now, boom, I just got better over time. All because I was willing to face that vulnerability that I had. Yeah, that's other areas where I still need help in. That's other areas where I know I need help in. That I know that, you know what, I look for other people that are maybe stronger in those areas. And I'm not afraid to go say, hey, man, I need some help. Hey, how did you do that? I got to a space where I'm not afraid. I don't care about what somebody else say. I just don't want to deal with those things and avoid things for years, because guess what? The reality is this. The average lifespan in America is 78 years old. I'm 42. So that means that I'm 3 years over halfway. So why do I want to waste some more years instead of I can go ahead and get the information now and start dealing with that, and that vulnerability can be eliminated and become a strength. So that's what I'm talking about. Just get to that space. Get to that space. There's so many different opportunities that you can do to go out there and take an inventory of the reality of you in those areas where you know that you need help in, you know that you need to improve in, you know that you've been avoiding, you know that you've been running from, right? Start taking that inventory of those areas and those vulnerabilities. And I mean by those vulnerabilities, I mean, ask yourself, why, ask God to answer, why are you the way you are? Why do you do things the way you do things? It ain't just no personality. Don't try to tie that up to no horoscope and all this, that, and the third. We all have personalities and stuff, right? But a lot of the stuff we champion as traits is really a response of fear from facing the vulnerability of maybe a traumatic thing that happened to us or an unaddressed issue that we are refusing to address. We are refusing to address that. And I would tell you, if you do that, I promise you what you will see, you will start to see your life. You start to see some things in your life, like you start to see some real changes happen in your life, like real changes. What I mean by real changes is once you start addressing those things, you'll start to see your relationships change with your kids, with your siblings, with your family members. You'll start to see yourself heal in areas where you just been avoiding that healing. you'll start to recognize that a lot of the stuff and the issues that you complain about or you always talked about was really self-induced by you because of your mindset. Like you'll get to that space and you'll start to be like, dang, oh, I was the issue there. You'll start to see all of these things. You'll start to take inventory. You start to look through, and then you'll start to find out, like, dang, I have the potential to be so much better than what I am. I don't have to lose me, but if I just address these things, boom, I can get better. And I promise, and this is not a conversation that or anything that try to act like I know it all. I got that is so not what I'm talking about. But what I am trying to do is encourage us to get to spaces to deal with those things about us. Yeah, deal with those things. Hey, why do you don't like to clean up? Hey, why do you don't like this? Why are you this way? Why do you react this way? Why do you always feel like it has to be why do you always get upset when things don't go the way that you want it to go? Why does it always have to be your way? And then I would tell you, you'll go back and you'll start peeling that onion back and you'll realize that can start from something that you probably never felt like you got your way growing up. So that's like, those are things I'm talking about. And you'll start connecting those dots. And I would tell you that overcoming that fear will lead you to a place of healing. You know, when you're talking about abundant life, right? An abundant life, that's a freeing life, a life where things happen to us. That's things that happen to me, right? And I'm thankful that God allowed me the opportunity to address me. And by addressing me, I had to accept the reality of me. And by accepting the reality of me, that empowered me to start working on me. And by me working on me, what I eventually started to happen was I started to see changes in my life. I started to see things happen in my life. And I started to see things change for the better and me gaining understanding of my why, of why I was the way I was. And it gave me an understanding of seeing things differently because of by me not facing my vulnerability, I started to have perceptions about things that wasn't true. And by me facing the vulnerabilities, it allowed me to see the truth in the situation, which gave me peace. It gave me a peace about me. And I didn't have to live with that perpetual struggle on the inside of me. God eased that out of me because I was willing to face the vulnerability of the reality of me. So I hope this was helpful to somebody today. I really do hope this was helpful. You guys, I appreciate the continued support. I will tell you we'll have a special guest next week. I'm excited about that conversation. I'm telling you, you're gonna want to share this and tune in. But this conversation is gonna be a thought-provoking conversation, and it's gonna be a very opinionated one. But I think it's gonna be one that need to be addressed. I think it's one that need to be addressed long time overdue. So you guys have a great and wonderful evening. I appreciate your support. God bless. Talk to you later.